start off with a bang. Oh, folks, good morning, everyone. We're going to have to generate a little energy today. For those of you I haven't met, I'm the Reverend Jennifer Brower. On behalf of my colleagues on the ministry team, the Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore and the Reverend Jay Brooks, who has just joined us as our developmental minister, it is my privilege to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock and to this morning's service. Before we get too far into our welcome and announcements, I'd like to just share with you that Sandra Frank, who is scheduled to be our worship assistant today, is not feeling well, so she won't be joining us today. She will not be here on the chancel. So when you, see her, you might want to just wish her well. Folks, as people of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we celebrate the spirit of life that dwells within each person. We honor the diversity of thought and philosophy that's brought together in our gathering. We affirm the use of reason and direct experience in our search for truth and meaning in life. And we hope that each person who crosses our threshold will feel warmly received. Immediately after this morning's service, we'll reconvene in the social hall for coffee and conversation, and for the UU Cafe, where lunch can be purchased for a very modest price. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. We're very glad that you've chosen to be here this morning, that you made your way up the very long driveway without getting lost, and made your way into the building. So if you're joining us for the first time, we'd really like to treat you to lunch. Please stop by the welcome table in the lobby to pick up a guest ticket for our UU Cafe luncheon. Folks, before we enter into our service proper, we have a few announcements to share with you. At this time, I invite you to take a moment to turn off your cell phone or anything else that might make noise. You've set this time apart in this week from all the other hours to give yourself a moment of pause. I invite you to take that moment of pause. If you have difficulty turning off your phone, we will find a kid to help us. As we're doing that, I invite you to turn to your order of service and have a look at the announcements that are printed there. You'll see that we've included information about next Sunday's service. We're excited that our sort of newly revived LGBTQ plus group will be leading worship for us next Sunday. I hope you'll be here for that. Looking back on our history of being a welcoming congregation and how we got here and where we are today. Today, our religious education program will be holding a fire drill. We won't be holding a fire drill. Our kids will be holding a fire drill. And so if you see them out on the lawn, don't be surprised. I hear that they're going to have cupcakes as an inducement to get them out of the building quickly. Whatever works. They're so good at this stuff. They're always so good at it. But it is important that we practice safe procedures here as well. We have announcements from our Social Justice Committee. I won't read all those to you. They're there, but I invite you to take the time to read those carefully, to ask questions about those things that pique your interest, and to get involved as your heart calls you to get involved. If you have any questions about any of these things or something else happening in the life of the congregation, I hope you won't hesitate to ask one of the ministers or ask folks who are out at that welcome table. There are folks from our membership committee who can certainly direct you to the right person if they can't answer your questions themselves. As you may be aware, we at UUCSR are engaged in our membership renewal campaign, as is the practice across Unitarian Universalist congregations. Every year, each member must renew their membership. Membership is renewed through a pledge of financial support and payment on that pledge before December 31st. This morning, we have the pleasure of hearing why membership is meaningful for Margarita Gonzalez, who is the new chair of our Religious Education Committee. I invite her to come here to the pulpit to share her story with you. Margarita.
Good morning. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Margarita Gonzalez, and I am the current chair of the RE committee. I am usually also the sixth grade teacher, but I am currently in exile as my son is a sixth grade student, and so he unceremoniously showed me the door, and so I hope to return to my post next year. I'm just going to share a tiny bit of what brought us to UUCSR and why this congregation is important to us. My son, for reasons of convenience, attends a parochial school. And so there are many, many things that do not necessarily jive with our family in that situation. And so I was looking for some place where we could be ourselves. And one of my friends mentioned, you have to check out a UU congregation. I really think that, it will speak to you, it will really call to you. And I said, well, I'll give it a chance. I'll let my son come to the summer program that they have here for the children. He attended the program, and it was about science. And you had him at evolution. For lack of a better word, my son instantaneously became an evangelical UU. He informed me at the end of the summer that he had joined the RE program and he was starting second grade. Oh, and also, I'm in the choir now. So with that, we became members. My journey was a little bit longer. He was all in, but it took me a little longer to find my niche here. When I saw that they were having a winter solstice ceremony, I just thought that spoke to so much of who I was. And my son was getting what he wanted, and I was getting what I wanted. And we very quickly became totally all in on UU. We've gained so much in terms of true friendships, and I know some of you are familiar with his new grandparents. We have gained family, and it has made all the difference to our little family, and we are very grateful for our community.
Thank you very much, Margarita, for your inspiring story. Friends, as we reflect upon the meaning of membership in our lives, I invite you to turn and greet those closest to you. Nice. Good luck. in this season of autumn beginnings and fresh starts, of a new school and congregational year. On this Sunday, when we mark the beginning of the Jewish High Holy Days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we gather in this place to reflect upon the days that have been, and with hope for the days before us still. From many, many different paths, we gather here to explore what is hidden, to consider the way of our hearts, to confess how we have stumbled, to mend what is broken. We assemble in the effort to quicken our compassion and mercy, to deepen our understanding, to renew our courage, to remember who we are. As tonight marks the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, let us begin in this hour that we share a period of reflection and reconciliation, restoration and renewal. As we light this chalice, symbol of our faith, may its flame illuminate the inspiration waiting to be discovered in our hearts. May its light reveal hope in our minds. May its warmth renew the dreams taking shape in our spirit. May our flaming chalice be a symbol of what can yet be. With the kindling of this flame, we have set this time apart as other time in this day and in this week. We invite you now, friends, to rise as you're comfortable and join in singing our opening hymn, which is in your teal hymnal, number 1011. Stephen will guide us in that singing. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. So if you open your hymnal to 1011, I just want to point out that the first two lines are repeated. So we sing line 1 and 2, and then we go back and sing them again. And then we sing the third and fourth line, and we go back and repeat them. So we'll do first, we sing the first line, second line, then we repeat the first and second line. Then we do the third line, fourth line, repeat third line and fourth line. So what we're going to do is we'll sing it all together, just like that, and then we'll sing it as a round. And we'll divide right down the center of the room, and we'll have this side start, and we'll have sopranos and tenors as 1 and 2, and I'll kind of get you going. But first, we're going to sing it all the way through together.
Please remain standing for our words and song of affirmation. They are printed in your order of service, and the song of affirmation has the new lyrics that we have been exploring and experimenting with. Would you join me, please? Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, this do we affirm and covenant with each other.
There are new words. I warn you, there are new words.
You may be seated. We give thanks for the power and beauty of that piece of music and the gifts offered by all of those who just brought that to us. It is hard to not applaud after hearing something so moving. We want so badly to express our gratitude, our praise, our affirmation, to say, wow, how did you do that? How do you do that? You've touched my soul. But a house of worship is not a place for applause. Not for a service of this depth. Sometimes we just need to receive that beautiful gift and hold it and thank our musicians afterward. To let it be a prayer offered by them to us and for us and with us. Every week we take up an offering. From time to time, it is important to remind ourselves that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. Our pledge payments and other contributions fund our annual ministries of music and worship, caring and religious education, and the work of putting our faith into action in the world, a world that needs what we have to offer. Many of us submit those pledge payments by credit card, and so we may rarely think about our spiritual practice of giving. We pass the plate during worship to make visible the invisible, to bring in the harvest that sustains us all. We pass the plate as an act of thanksgiving for the gifts we give, and to be reminded that the contributions of each and every one of us matter. Much, much more than a chore to be accomplished, our participation in the weekly offering reminds us that the act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being and growth as anything else we do here on Sunday mornings. This morning's offering will now be given and received. Would the ushers please come forward? We join now in the responsive reading, number 637, in the back of the gray hymnal. It is the Litany of Atonement. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone. For falling short of admonitions of the Spirit. For losing sight of our unity. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness. We enter now into a time of wordless meditation and contemplation. To hear what stirs in our hearts, to discern how we might seek and offer forgiveness, and to reflect upon the needs within our world. Those who wish to are invited to come forward to light a candle of sorrow or hope. As mentioned in our opening words at the start of our service, today we have chosen to mark the beginning of the Jewish High Holy Days and Rosh Hashanah, the two-day Jewish New Year, which begins at sundown. For the benefit of those who, like me, were not raised Jewish, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah usher in the 10 days of repentance, also known as the days of awe, which culminate in the solemn high holy day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Funny thing between the differences in Jewish culture in Manhattan on the Upper East Side and Jewish culture here in Manhasset. I wasn't raised Jewish, but when you grow up in Manhattan, you get sort of honorary Jew status like conferred upon you. So my Jewish community all said Yom Kippur. Kippur. I move out here, and everybody says Yom Kippur. So, hear what you need to, okay? Rosh Hashanah, which translated means the head of the year, is more solemn than our raucous secular New Year. According to tradition, God judges all creatures during the 10 days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, deciding whether or not they will live or die in the coming year. On Rosh Hashanah, God inscribes the names of the righteous in the book of life and condemns the wicked to death. People who fall between the poles of righteousness and wickedness, which I'm betting would be just about all of us, have until Yom Kippur to perform acts of repentance in the hope of being inscribed in the book of life. And so, as you might imagine, observant Jews spend the days of awe putting their spiritual house in order. The days of awe are a time for deep reflection and contemplation, of looking squarely at one's living, examining what is held in the privacy of the heart, as well as assessing one's deeds in the many roles we fill as adult child, partner, friend, colleague, co-worker, employer, employee, parent, grandparent, neighbor, congregant, and so many others. It's a time of seeking forgiveness from others for things done and not done, and a time for releasing the grudges and anger we carry. After all, in the words of Mark Twain, anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. Releasing our anger and offering forgiveness heals our hearts. So whether or not we are observant Jews, the work of seeking and offering forgiveness is a good and worthy spiritual practice, one which we have touched on just a little together through this morning's music and readings, and a practice that I know some in this sanctuary will continue over the days ahead. So no matter what our theological leaning, there is wisdom to glean from the days of awe. Although many of us are familiar with Rosh Hashanah and the Jewish New Year, we may never have learned that Rosh Hashanah commemorates the creation of the world and humankind. It is the birthday of the world, if you will. This year, in reflecting upon Rosh Hashanah, I have found myself particularly drawn to viewing this period of holy days through this lens. I've found myself thinking and hearing in my head the poetic creation story told in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. Through the power of the Word, the Most High brings all things into being. I invite you to hear with new ears and artistic, imaginative minds this abridged version of that story, which certainly would not be acceptable in a faith community of biblical literalists. In the beginning, the Most High created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void. The darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Most High was moving over the face of the waters. And the Most High said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And the Holy separated light from the darkness. And the Holy said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." And the Holy called the firmament heaven. And the being known as God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which their seed is contained, each according to its kind." And the Transcendent said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate the day from night, and let them be as signs for the people, and for the seasons, and for the days and years." And God made two great lights, one greater light to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament." So the numinous created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And the Spirit said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kind." And then the Most High said, "Let us make humankind in our image." And so the Most High created humankind, male and female. And the Most High blessed them. "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, and you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And so it was. And God saw everything that God had made, and behold, it was very good. Behold, it was very good. I like that it's not perfect, but very good. This year at Rosh Hashanah, we might undertake the introspective work of exploring our relationships with all of life. Poetry aside, do we experience ourselves as part of creation? Do you experience yourself as connected to the elements and actions of the universe? Do you feel deep in your heart, as Carl Sagan described, the cosmos is within you? Do you feel that we are made of star stuff? Do you know that you are star stuff? That each of us is a way for the universe to know itself. Sagan wrote that some part of our being knows that this is where we came from, and we long to return, and we can and ultimately will, because the universe is within us, and we return to it. Made of the same building blocks that take the shape of all life on this planet, as we consider our living and whether we might be inscribed in the book of life, we might ask, do we live day to day in a manner that honors the cosmos? What is our obligation to our earthly home? Are we in right relationship with the natural resources that are abundant and ever threatened on this unusual, supernova-fed, and remarkably fertile planet. Scholars and school children remind us that viewing the natural world as separated from humans is not only ethically problematic, but empirically false. Microorganisms in our gut aid digestion, while others compose part of our skin. Pollinators, such as bees and wasps, help produce the food we eat. And photosynthetic organisms such as trees and photoplankton provide the oxygen that we need in order to live, in turn taking up the carbon dioxide that we expel. We are seeing more and more clearly how the fates of humanity and nature are intertwined. If we use Rosh Hashanah as a time to reflect upon how we have lived in the past year, we might ask, have we been in right relationship with the natural order of which we are part and parcel? Do we embrace a narrative that views the earth not as a dead rock with resources to exploit, but as a living system whose health depends on the health of its organs and tissues, its wetlands and forests, seagrass and mangroves, and fish and coral, and so much more? Are we in right relationship with all that shares life on this planet? We might hold this in mind as we talk about how to steward the land held by this congregation. What is our obligation to this little piece of creation? And what of our relationship to the other creatures on this planet? I have wrestled with this some lately, and I know some of you have too. In August, I was driving down to Chincoteague Island, a little barrier island off of Virginia, past many of the chicken processing plants that sort of are housed in the Delmarva Peninsula. And I found myself behind a tractor trailer of chicken cages. A content omnivore, but for gluten because I have celiac disease. The stark cruelty of those cages disturbed me deeply in that moment and really haunts me still, or I would not be mentioning them from this pulpit, I'm sure. It prompted me to reflect upon the ethical eating practices that some of you I know ascribe to, and I wondered, is it right that we should raise an enormous population of animals in unnatural, if not inhumane, conditions for the purpose of their slaughter? Is it right for me, the one, only one, to continue to support that system? I like chicken, but I don't have my own chickens, and I'm not slaughtering my own chickens. So I have to think deeply about my relationship with the food industry. And in our country and around the world, there is such vast disparity to access of food and access to food of high nutritional value and to clean water that supports all of life. So we must ask ourselves, what is our relationship with our human kin? Fundamentally interconnected to all living things, with elements of the universe dispersed equally in every single one of us. What then is our relationship to other people? What is our intrinsic and therefore sacred obligation to those in our community, to those of all ages across this country, to those who come to this country, and to people around this world who are suffering? Do we believe, as 13th century Persian poet Saadi wrote, all peoples are members of the same body? 13th century. Created from one essence. If fate brings suffering to one member, the others cannot stay at rest. Do we believe it? How are we connected to the human family? How are our relationships with those who are closest to us, and with the acquaintances and strangers we encounter over the course of every single day? What is our connection with those gathered here in this sanctuary this morning? What is our holy obligation to the children who are not our own, who may run past us, seemingly recklessly, on their way to experiencing as much life as they possibly can in one morning here at Shelter Rock? Are we in right relationship? We are not Jewish, and so Rosh Hashanah is not ours. But as articulated in the third source of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we recognize and honor wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our spiritual and ethical living. So let us be inspired by the observance of Rosh Hashanah as a holy day honoring creation. Let it be a time to refresh and recreate ourselves and our communities. A new opportunity to fulfill our hopes and dreams of a better world. Let it prompt us to explore and elevate our relationships with the elements of life and lead us to a rediscovery of the self as being at one with all of creation. As we move through the days of awe and approach Atonement Day, indeed, let us experience a state, that higher state of at-one-ment. 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 Of being one with all. That allows us to create lives worthy of living. In prayerful meditation, I share with you the words of Eugene Pickett, former late president of the UUA. I invite you to settle into your pew in some way that is comfortable, to take a deep breath, to join me in meditation. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, we give thanks. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, we give thanks. For the joy and fullness of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, we offer our thanks. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness, transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, we give thanks. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding views not shared, we give thanks. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, for human liberty and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm, to seek, and ask for forgiveness, to offer forgiveness, to choose our path. We give thanks this day. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes and vision, not by our words, but by our deeds. So may it be. We invite you to rise now as you're comfortable and join in singing our closing hymn, which is 219 in the gray hymnal. The days of awe begin tonight, but let our awe last much longer than 10 days. May our introspection and reflection, our reconciliation and renewal prepare us for the year to come. May it be a healthy year. May we live our lives with integrity and a sense of our place in this universe. May we seek peace within ourselves and live in harmony with other human beings in all of life. And through such living, may we be inscribed in the book of life. So may it be, and amen.